for sure.
That presentation you showed kind of at the beginning with the goals and the whole 12
Yes.
week thing, where do we get access to that? Did I miss that?
I will add you to it. I'll send an email that will attach it, and you guys can start working on that. And what's nice is that there's also, per every tab that you fill, there's an example tab. So if you have questions, you can just refer to that. Okay, guys?
Thanks, Carrie.
Like you got it, Scott.
All right, I think we're here. So here's what we're going to talk about today, guys. And by the way, I love this graphic. She's just so happy just riding that tractor and just having a great day. So let's move on to what I've built my business around. I've been in the business for, God, this is my 24th year. And early on, when I first started, as is pretty common and typical with most new agents, I didn't have a lot of direction. The blessing that you guys have is that you are starting your careers with Keller Williams. When I started, I received really virtually no training, no support, no help at all. And you guys are at the #1 rated training company across all industries. So you're getting the best training for not just new realtors, but across all industries. Keller Williams is known as providing and having the best training. So you are putting yourselves in a position to be successful. Unlike myself, I really struggled when I first started. So it took me a minute to figure out exactly how to be successful. And I'm going to share with you kind of my journey, not so much the journey, but what I'm doing today and what I've been doing for the last probably 20 years that has got me to the position where I'm at today. My mantra for 2021 is 2 words. It's just get it. So I'm going after it and I'm going to get it. And I'm not going to let anything get in the way of achieving my goals this year. Last year, I closed 50 transactions. And this year, my goal is 72. And I'm just going to go get it. So if you don't have something that's pushing you and motivating you this year in terms of a motto or a quote or something that's motivating you, think about today. What is your mantra? What is going to, every day when you get up, what is the thing in your mind that is going to trigger you to say, okay, today I got to go be successful? Because for me, there's no excuses. And I'm going to do everything I can possibly do to achieve my goal of 72 transactions. So I'm just going to go get it. So let me just ask, and if we're in person, this would be a much bigger interactive meeting. But I'd like a few of you to just unmute and just kind of tell me where you feel like you're going to get your business from. Where is your business coming from? Do you have an idea of where you want to target your business? What areas are you going to pursue and focus on to go get buyers? Where are you going to find your buyers? Where are you going to find your sellers? If a few of you have some ideas and some thoughts and have some direction, just unmute and just kind of share with the group where you plan on finding those people.
So Scott, I'm new to the field. Like I have no experience whatsoever, but when I talked to Carrie the first time, I did tell her I had an interest with like Spanish speaking customers. I think a lot of times they want to find someone that can understand them and be able to explain contracts and whatnot to them in a well-mannered, like correctly. And so I'm really looking forward to helping concentrate on the Spanish speaking community.
Perfect. I love that. So we would call that demographic farming. Mm-hmm. So you're going to focus on a specific demographic, which has nothing to do with stereotyping, or it's not racist. You can focus your demographic on like luxury homes. That's a segment of the real estate market. You could focus on a particular, as you mentioned, Hispanic. If you have a skill set within that you can bring to that community, you're focusing on that demographic. You can focus on first-time buyers. That's a first-time buyer demographic. Who else has an idea of a demographic that you want to focus on, or some other subset of the real estate market?
Hey Scott, this is Tyler.
Hey, Tyler.
Um, hey, no, I appreciate your time. And the one thing I really want to focus on, my background is new construction. So I was a construction manager for 8 years, different builders around the country, and I think I have a good skill set on just kind of that specific new construction side of it. So I'm working with Carrie to try to get with her on her expertise on builders and things in the area. I've looked at Edge, looked at Ivory, looked at Toll Brothers, stuff like that. So trying to go into that process.
Awesome. I love that. Taking what you have as an already existing skill set and then using the training that's specific to real estate and then leveraging that into something that you already are good at, like speaking Spanish or some construction experience, and focusing on that demographic of new construction buyers and sellers. I think that's great. Here's some other thoughts of where your business could come from. So your SOI. You'll hear that term a lot, SOI. It's probably already been defined for you. If it hasn't, your SOI is your sphere of influence. Some people will call it your circle of influence. But most people, when they first start, that's probably your biggest gold mine of where you're going to find your business, your SOI. Those are people that people that know you, and the easiest conversations with people that you know that care about you and your success is to let them know that you can help them with buying or selling. That could be neighbors, family members, church community, neighborhood, any sporting clubs that you are involved in. So people that referrals, certainly just letting people know that you're in a position to help and asking them to recommend you to help those that they know. For sale by owners, that's a great subset that you can focus on. Expired listings. Who's brave enough to unmute and explain to us what an expired listing would be? Who can define an expired listing?
Hello. This is
Hey, Tracy.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
Well, an expired listing is basically a previous listing that didn't sell.
Very good. You're exactly right. So they had a contract signed with an agent, and for whatever reason, that agent was unsuccessful at getting that home sold and closed for that seller. And their contract came to the point where it expired. The term of that contract expired. And now the seller is no longer committed to any particular realtor. And if they still had a desire to still sell the home, then it's like it's open market, right? It's open hunting season. You as a realtor, this seller has pretty much raised their hand and pretty much said, I'm interested in selling my home. The person I hired was not able to do that for me, but I still want to sell my house. Which of you other realtors out there can do a better job? Yeah.
I think it's really important to get it right as it's expired, because then they get bombarded by a ton of other realtors to do the same thing, and it becomes more challenging, don't you? Have you ever worked expireds?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's something that I've been listening to some real estate coaches podcast, and what the terms that they use is fast, furious follow-up, the FFF, fast, furious follow-up. And with expireds, you've got to use the FFF, fast, furious follow-up. There are agents that focus their business on just getting expireds. And so it's not like you're the only, this is not a unique marketing opportunity. There's a lot of agents that do this, not a ton, but there's enough. So as soon as that morning, when it hits the MLS that says expired status, you will not be the only person reaching out to that seller. You will have competition.
I got a question, Scott.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do something on the MLS for you to get notified of expireds? Because I know that I can come across them, but I have no idea how to find that.
Absolutely. Yep. So I'll get to that in 1 second, but there's some service providers that you can pay a monthly service fee. As new agents, I would probably recommend not doing that, because you want to be, Gary Keller says you want to lead with revenue. In other words, you don't want to start spending a bunch of money until you're making money, right? But you can get to the point once you're starting to make money to subscribe to these service providers that every morning they send you a list of not only the expireds, but names, phone numbers, and email addresses, to the point where they have that information. And then you right then and there, you open it up and you have phone numbers right there available to you. That does cost some money. Some of them are, $80 a month up to a few $100 a month, depending on the level of contact information that they're providing. But short of subscribing to a service and paying a monthly fee, you can go into the MLS, and you'll probably ask Carrie or Nick to help you do this if you're not familiar with the MLS enough. But you can go in and perform a search in the MLS and just put the status that you're searching for. You're not looking for actives or under contracts. You're looking for expired status. You can even look for canceled status. What you don't want to pursue is withdrawn or off market, because withdrawn and off market status still indicates that they have a valid contract. They're just not advertising the property for showings. But a canceled status means that the seller has canceled the listing contract, which means they no longer have a contract with that listing agent. An expired means that the contract expired. So those are the two statuses. Is that right? Statuses? I don't know what the plural is for status. Statusi? I don't know. Statuses that you would want to look at. So,
Hey, Scott,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you allow Lindsay Budge to come back into the conversation?
Yes.
You're the host, so I've got to have you do that.
Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get Lindsay in here.
I appreciate it.
Lindsay. I think I just let her in. She didn't have a name, but I just let somebody in, so she should be
Okay,
there.
cool. Hey.
Perfect. So yeah, so Carrie, you might want to, those that are interested, they may want to learn how to perform a search looking for just expireds and canceleds. And then what you can do is set yourself up on what we call a hot sheet. And a hot sheet is where you save your search so that every time a new listing hits the market with the parameters that you're looking for, like expireds and withdrawns or canceled, sorry. Let's say there's an expired or withdrawn or canceled that hits the market every day. Then every morning from the MLS, you get an email alerting yourself, not your buyer that there's a new listing, but you yourself receive the email that there's a new expired or a new canceled that hit the market that morning. And that's how you can stay on top of it without having to manually go in every single day and search. You set up the search one time and it will send them to you every time. It may not be every day because this market, most homes are moving, but anytime there is an expired or a canceled, it will email you and alert you. But then you have to find the contact information. You got to find out, how do I contact them? How do I call them? If you don't have access to that data because you're not subscribing to a company that provides that to you, your next best option is just drive to their house, knock on their door, introduce yourself, bring some kind of marketing brochure, a postcard or something that leaves them some value with your contact information. But you want to be first, right? I mean, it's the FFF, fast, furious follow-up. And you want to do that. If you're going to pursue that, that's got to be a daily thing that you can pursue. Tracy, did that answer your question?
It does. One thing I do, if I can't find their name, it should give their name, but if it doesn't, like at the bottom, you can look in the tax data to find out what their name is. And at least a lot of times I'll look on, see if I can find them on Facebook and contact them that way.
And that's a great option as well. So absolutely, in the MLS, there's a link in the MLS sheet where you can click on the tax ID number and it will go to the county tax record and it will show you who the owners are. So you can at least get their names. It won't have any contact information, but you can at least get their names. And then you can be a Facebook stalker like Tracy and try to figure out who they are on Facebook and then send them a private message. And maybe they even have their contact information, an email or a phone number on their Facebook profile, and you can reach out that way. So it's a cheap, inexpensive, free way to try to pursue those expired listings. So great discussion on that.
I like the referral as a stalker.
All right, we're going to move on to the next one. If I can. Okay, here we go. So demographic farming. We started talking about that. You can focus on a segment of the market, like first-time buyers, new construction, Hispanics, whatever skill set you bring. That's a subset of the real estate market. And there's others as well. Today we're going to talk about geographic farming. So geographic farming is the same type of idea as demographic farming, but the difference is it's not a subset of the market broken down into groups. It's simply a geographic area that you're going to focus on, regardless of demographic, regardless of first-time buyer, second-time buyer, move-up buyer, what language they speak, new construction, existing. It's irrelevant. It's irrespective of that. It's simply a geographic location, blocks of houses that you're going to become the neighborhood expert in. Geographic farming, I define it as, I don't think this is in the Webster's dictionary. This is just my definition of geographic farming, but it's an intentional and purposeful and consistent marketing campaign directed to the homeowners. And that's important, to the homeowners. We're not looking for buyers. We're looking for homeowners of a specific geographic neighborhood for the purpose of securing listings in that area. So geographic farming is targeting homeowners that want to sell. So if you want to focus all your business just on buyers, this probably is not going to be useful information to you. But Gary Keller says that if you own the listing, you own the market. And the reason is, especially in this market, I work with buyers, but I work with more sellers than buyers. And in my experience in these 24 years, working with a buyer, you get paid the same working with a buyer or a seller. So if you close a buyer, you get paid 2.5%, 3%. You work with a seller, you get paid 2.5%, 3%. You're selling the same house, same price, same compensation. But what I've learned is that with buyers, you're spending a lot more time with buyers, especially in this market. You're driving around as soon as a home hits the market, you're in your car meeting them at that house and every other home that hit the market that day. And then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, you're writing offer after offer after offer. Meanwhile, me as a listing agent, I put it on the MLS, maybe I host an open house, and then let all the buyer agents do all the work by bringing all their buyers to my listing, right? So listings and working with sellers is a lot less time intense, but there's nothing wrong with working with buyers, absolutely not. But the geographic farming model is to try to focus your business to secure more listings so that you own the market, as Gary Keller said. Just as an example, and I'm not super comfortable sharing this because these are my own numbers. And by the way, my son is on this call. He just got his license, so he's going to see all these numbers, but that's okay. This is just production from farming. Last year, I closed 50 transactions, 52, 35 of them were just from farming. And so you can see the compensation that I earned last year just in farming, which was about $390,000 just from focusing on what I'm going to teach you how to do today. And so that's 35 out of the 50. So there was more commissions earned on top of the 35 from farming. And those other ones, 17 were from my SOI or from referrals. Farming, I'll be honest, it's a lot of people will say it's an antiquated way to get business because everybody likes the new shiny stuff with technology and apps, and you can respond quick and you can post links and you can do all that. So this is kind of an old school way, but I just wanted to throw this slide up there because as you can see, it does work. So this is just a slide to show you where I do my farming. I live in West Jordan and I farm in West Jordan. I live right here. My longest commute to a day at work is coming here to the office because it takes me 20 minutes to get here. Most of the business that I sell in a year, I can walk there in 3 minutes. So I love the fact that it's convenient. It's close to my house. I know the market. I know a lot of neighbors because we've been there. We live there. My kids go to school with friends of people that I've sold homes to. So you can see I've focused an intentional, a highly focused, intentional effort to build a business in a specific area. And if you can see down over here, can you see my mouse moving? So you can see over here, this is outside of the farming areas that I normally do. So the farm is really outlined in the red border. We've expanded some of our farms and we're starting to get traction in these other areas as we've implemented the same farming techniques to get more listings in these other areas. You don't have to farm, by the way, in West Jordan. Oh, what'd I do? Hold on a second. I stopped sharing my screen on accident. Hold on a second. Let me get back here. Nate, can you come help me? Sorry, guys. I don't know what I did. So you don't have to farm in West Jordan. In fact, if you wanted to farm in West Jordan, then I'm happy to go head to head with anybody that wants to compete in West Jordan. But we'll talk about how you find an area, what's the best area to farm into. The map up right there. And how you identify it, how you start farming, how you get there, and how you start to become the expert in that area. I don't want to be the one that talks for an hour by myself. So if you have questions, again, in person, this is a much more interactive presentation. So if anybody ever has any questions, thoughts, comments, feel free to just unmute and ask questions or make some comments so we can have a discussion. And I'm happy to do that. In fact, I'd prefer that. So any questions or comments up to this point that anybody has?
Hey, Scott. Yeah, I got a question. Okay, that's your neighborhood. So when did you start? When did you move there? Like those dots or the pinned areas, are those all listings that you've had over the years? Is this recent?
Yeah, great questions.
What does that look? Yeah.
So I moved into this neighborhood right here about 13, 14 years ago, started farming right when I moved in. I got licensed in 1997 and started out really slow. I went to a super experienced agent and I said, look, I want to make this my career. How do I do this? How do I become a long lasting agent? And he says, you have to focus on becoming a listing specialist. So he said, pick an area and just make some flyers and walk around, hand out flyers door to door in a neighborhood. So that's what I did. That's the only coaching I had. Make flyers, pass them out. Yeah. So that's what I did. And I started that in probably 1998, 1999. And I had one listing in my first 2 full years. I listed one house. My first year of farming, I had 4 listings. My second year of farming, I had 8 listings. And that was here in Utah. I'm originally from California. So after my 4th year and selling 8 listings and building that farm, we shut the business down and moved back to California, my wife and I, with our 2 boys to raise our kids near all of our family that still lived in California. But I got in and still stayed in real estate. And so I knew one thing. I knew how to farm. And so I picked some neighborhoods in California, started farming, and was the second highest producer in my office in California my first year because I dominated my farm right off the bat, and built a farm and was closing 25, 30, 35 transactions a year in California, which was great because prices were that much higher. So that much bigger commissions. And then my wife and I decided, hey, let's move back to Utah. So we shut the farm down and started a new business 13 years ago here in Utah. And so those pins are all listings, and all within about the last 5 years. If I'd have done all 13, I mean, you can already see that some of them are just right on top of the other ones. So that's basically listings over the last 5 years, which averaged to be probably about 25 listings a year for the last 5 years. This last year, I listed 36 houses. So of the 52 transactions, 36 of them were working with sellers, where all the buyer agents were working their butts off, driving around with their clients all day, every day, showing my listings. And I put a sign in the yard, held an open house, got clients off my open house while the buyer agents were selling my homes for me. So it's a business that is, you can grow faster and do more transactions without incurring increased cost by building a team, because listings take less time, commitment. You could sell 50 houses a year with listings, but it would be really challenging to do 50 buyers by yourself because of the time commitment with 50 buyers. So Tyler, did that answer your questions?
Yeah, no, you answered it. And that's really fascinating that you went back to California and then came back to Utah.
Yeah.
And then still produced. I mean, that's amazing. So.
That's the one thing that I had comfort in, knowing that when we moved back and forth, and by the way, those moves had nothing to do with any strategic real estate marketing. It was just a matter of, hey, you know what? We grew up in California. We came to Utah to get a college degree, got into real estate while we were here. We had promised family that when we were done, we were moving back to raise our kids with family. And then 4 years later, we just felt the pull to come back to Utah to raise our kids here. So it was a family decision, not a business decision. Because in fact, when we moved, we actually left Utah when the height of the market in 04 to 06 was happening, and moved to Utah when the peak of the market was already ending. So we actually hit the tail end of a boom while left the start of the boom in Utah. So we didn't, and then when we came back here in 07, 6 months after we moved back, the bottom of the market started to fall out. So it certainly wasn't any strategic business move. It was certainly a family move, but I knew how to farm, and I just doubled down on my efforts. And every year my listings and my dominance in those areas have increased. So much so that, you know, in the entire city of West Jordan has the 4th largest population in the state. There's 9,300 agents in the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. And just with those pins that you see there, that amount of activity year over year for the last 10 years has basically won me the recognition of being the #1 top producing agent in West Jordan. And it's not that I'm selling hundreds of houses in the city. It's just that most people don't focus on a geographic area. So they're selling houses from Layton down to Nephi, where my business is focused on a geographic area. And I've used that branding to reinforce that with West Jordan people as I'm known as the West Jordan Realtor and as the #1 realtor in West Jordan. And I brand that in all the stuff that I do. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Scott, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Clyde.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to find out if you could say something about how discount brokers might have affected your business over the last few years, because I know there's companies out there like Homey that people are gravitating.
Hey, Clyde, we don't say the H word here.
Okay. Okay, very good.
No,
I know that they're buying you for confidence, but you probably come across situations where you know you're fighting for business because of the discount brokerages, right?
Good question. So yeah, I've seen a little bit of their presence increase throughout the valley, and of course, West Jordan is not immune to that. So what I've decided to do is dive into the numbers. The numbers tell a story. And what my numbers show, and knowing your numbers is important. And if you don't have numbers yet as a new agent, you can use office numbers, because every listing that's sold, every buyer that's sold is under our principal broker, Rich Summers. And so we can use those numbers. But I have enough experience and enough numbers myself that I'm using my own numbers. And so what I know is that, and this is before this year, when you put a house on the market and it's selling for $50,000 above list price with no appraisal and all that craziness. But in the previous years, my numbers show that my list price to sold price is 101%.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, I'm selling my listings for 1% higher than the list price. So I'm able to get enough attention. And again, this is before 2020, 2021, where I can say, hey, I'm selling my listings on average for 1% higher than our list price because of the marketing that we do to bring enough people in, and doing it in 4.7 days. Where the market average is selling it at 97.3%. So 2.7% below the list price, which is almost a $9,000 difference. And they're doing it in 19 days. So if you want to make $9,000 less when you sell your house and keep your house clean with all your babies and all your toddlers and all the dishes for 19 days instead of 4, then you're welcome to hire somebody else to do that for 19 days and make $9,000 less. Or I can put your house on the market on a Thursday, be under contract by a Monday, and do it in 4 days and make you $9,000 more money.
Now, I know a lot of people think that the MLS does the bulk of the work, but can we honestly tell people that we do marketing as a company above and beyond what the MLS will do to bring buyers in?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, but as a company, as a Keller Williams company, not so much. You as the listing agent, that's up to you to do. And I'll show you what I do.
Okay.
To bring in additional traffic, no matter what the market is.
Okay.
But that's a great question, and we'll get to that in a second. Did that answer your questions and thoughts, Clyde?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else before we move on? All right. So the benefits of geographic farming, really, it's designed to create a constant flow of business. And I want to reiterate that I don't want all of you to just say, okay, I'm dropping everything. I'm not going to demographic farm. I'm not going to go after my Hispanic buyers or sellers. I'm not going to go after new construction. I'm not going to go after first-time buyers or luxury buyers. I'm not going to work my SOI, because geographic farming is more of a long-term play. If you realize what you're really doing is you're marketing to a neighborhood who's never seen your face, never seen your name. So you have to build some trust and some camaraderie with those people in that neighborhood. And that takes time. It could take 30 days. It could take 6 months. So if you just say, I'm only going to do this, it might be 6 months before you get your first listing. And that's like starvation mode, right? So it's designed to create a constant flow of business over the long term. Every year I've done this, my listings have increased. But my first year, I only got 1 listing. My second year, I got 4. And now I did 36, right? So you can't put all of your eggs in just this one basket right now.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
how often do you, so when you do geographic farming, you're sending out postcards and different things like that? And
Yeah.
how often do you do it?
That's a great question. And we will get to that. I promise. It's in about 3 more slides. I'll get to what I do, how often I do it. You guys have great minds because you're asking all the right questions. And because I've been there and I'm doing it, and this is like my 100th farming presentation with this group. I know the questions you're asking, so I'll put it all in here. So we'll get to it, but keep asking, because if you have a question that I don't have in here, then I certainly want to ask it. But don't be offended if I put your question off, because we will get to it. It's in a couple of slides. Okay. Thanks, Tracy. The other benefit is that you become the area specialist. I see people in my neighborhood grocery store that I don't know, that follow me on Facebook, that see my signs, and they'll come up to me and say, hey, aren't you the West Jordan realtor guy? So it's kind of cool that my face and my name are recognized. I had a listing appointment just yesterday, and they said, hey, we have like 5 friends that are in real estate, and we might risk losing or hurting some friendships, but we know you know how to sell homes in West Jordan better than anybody else, so we want to hire you. And so that feels good that I've built that reputation, that people are willing to, I'm not in the business to ruin friendships, right? But they're willing to hire me because they know I can do a better job than their friend that lives up in Kaysville that has a license, right? You build your reputation on your branding and name recognition. You end up taking more listings. And as I mentioned, when you own the listing, you own the market. The benefit is when you get more listings, you end up selling more, getting more listings, because when you have your sign in the yard and then you can sell it in a couple of days, you can advertise your evidence of success to other neighbors, right? So when neighbors drive by and say, wow, that other sign's been up for like 45 days and Scott's sign went up on Thursday and on Monday there was a sold sign, then you can promote that, right? And so you can promote the benefit of your success to other people. And when you represent a seller, oftentimes your sellers become a buyer. Sometimes they're moving out of state. Sometimes they've already signed a contract with the builder, so you've gotten there a little bit late. But if you're working just with a buyer, once you close that buyer, you're done. When somebody calls you and says, hey, I want to sell my house, and they haven't signed with a builder, they haven't signed with another home that they're going to purchase, that's a seller and a buyer. So your geographic farming not just got you 1 client, but got you 2 transactions, right? So let's talk about this. Any questions on the benefits? There's probably others, but those are probably the big ones. Let's talk about how you pay for it, and then we'll get into how you do it. I'll give you some samples of what I do. So here's the thing. At the office, well, let's start with this. There's very few people that farm like I do. I've talked with a few others that do. Lee Stern in our Keller Williams Salt Lake City office, she has been a farmer forever. She's been in the business for probably 40 years. She's a member of the Stern team, which is one of the top producing teams, not just in the state, but in the country. And I agree with what her assessment is that as a new agent just starting out, just farming, because most new agents don't have, if you're anything like me, I didn't have an unlimited budget to go out and market. If you do as a new agent, more power to you. But most people don't have an unlimited budget to just go out and spend thousands of dollars a month on farming. If you do, great. If not, here at the office, you can print 200 black and white copies for free every single month, which means that if you wanted to create 400 for free, you can create flyers on a half sheet of paper so that you have 2 on 1 full sheet, print it, cut it in half, and now you have 400 black and white flyers that cost you literally $0, right? I'm going to show you what I'm doing now, but what I did when I started, because I was on a really low budget, is I started printing black and white copies. And because it was black and white, I wanted to add some flair to it. So I printed it on, I still remember the name, on lunar blue paper. So it was blue paper, black and white print, and I printed them at Office Max for 4 cents a copy. So it cost, if I was farming 500 houses, that cost me $20. For $20, I was farming 500 houses a month. Here at the office, again, you can do half sheets, do 400 at 0 cost, right? If you want to print color, those are 15 cents each, but you can do the same. Do 2 per page, cut it in half. Now you've printed a color flyer for 7.5 cents, right? You're not cheating the system. You're just paying what it costs to print, and you can double the number you get by just doing half sheets and just cut it in half. By the way, when you start your farming, because it can be expensive and time consuming, the recommendation is that you start in a neighborhood between 250, but no more than 500 houses. That's the recommendation. If you get into 1,000 houses, 2,000 houses right off the bat, and this will make more sense in the next slide as we get to how you start your farming and what you do and how you start getting your message out there. If you have too many houses to start with, there's not enough time and it gets too expensive. So 250 to 500. When you're ready to start printing, not at the office because you're doing more. I don't print here at the office anymore. When we first came to Keller Williams 5 years ago, everybody in the office knew when it was flyer day for Scott's Farming, because my wife would come in and literally just live at the printer for like 2 hours as we're printing like 2,000 copies in color. Because it was still, even at 15 cents, was way cheaper than going to Office Max. They're like 40 cents. But now take this number down or take a screenshot at UCI, which is the Utah Correctional Industries. It's actually the Draper Prison. They have a print shop at the prison where they have inmates that run the print shop so that they are learning a skill so that when they are released, they have some skill to be hireable once they're out. And so they do it basically just at cost because they don't have to pay these inmates hardly any money. And so it's super, super cheap. They can print brochures, flyers, folders, banners, signs, anything. I went from lunar blue paper on black and white print, half sheets, full sheets, then color, 8.5 by 11. And now I use actual door hangers, like a long skinny door hanger with a slit at the top, and UCI prints all that stuff for me. It's super cheap. And here's what I would recommend. Well, here's what I do, and then I'll get into what I would recommend you do. When you first start, you want to be the one that's dropping off those flyers at every door. And not just dropping them, but you want to be knocking on every door, introducing yourself to the neighbors. Leaving information is one thing. Knocking on doors and saying hi, introducing yourself is completely different and adds a lot more value. I take a very low-key sales approach. In fact, I'm not selling really at all. The higher intensity your sales approach is when you door knock, the more turned off people are going to be. And I know that comes a little bit as a surprise because we're in the business of selling. But people, first of all, when people knock on our door nowadays, we're like, who is knocking on my door? Nobody should be at my door, right? Who's calling my phone? They should be texting me. So they're a little bit put off that they got to go to the door because they're not expecting company. So it's a really soft sales approach. It's really bringing something of value, which really is, here's a sample of homes that have sold in your area. Who doesn't want to know that today? Because if they're thinking of selling, they want to know what other homes have sold for, so they can kind of get an idea of maybe what their home could be worth based on another home that's similar to theirs. So you just have something in your hand, you knock on the door, that you introduce yourself and just say, hey, I'm just here in the neighborhood, passing out information to keep you up to date on what the market is like in your specific neighborhood. Not in the Salt Lake Valley, not in the whole entire city of West Jordan, for example, but right here in your neighborhood. Here's a few homes that have recently sold in the last 30 days, just so you can kind of get an idea of what your home compares to and what your home might be worth today. That's it. You can add, are you thinking of selling? You can add, hey, do you know of any of your neighbors that are thinking of selling? But you don't want to get too intense, because guess what? Next month, you're going back again. And then the month after that, you're going back again. And so you don't want to turn people off. You want to just be adding value to them, right? Questions, comments? I know people are a little scared about door knocking and talking with people face-to-face. This is a face-to-face business, as much as Zillow and Homey want us to think it's not, but it really is.
Hey, Scott.
I've got a question, Scott.
Go for it.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
My question is, as a brand new agent, let's say you're going around and you're knocking on doors and you're passing out flyers and stuff, and you get somebody who's, who asks you questions about, how long have you been doing this, or what are your numbers? And I guess basically my question is, how do you offer them something of value when you haven't done this? You have no experience. How do you rope them in and make them, see you as a real agent who can do the job for you when you have no experience?
That's a great question. And it's a little bit of a challenging one to answer. If you're on your own as an individual agent, you don't have the luxury of saying, well, I work on a team and this is what we've done, right? But you have an office that can be your team. I would never say, if somebody said, how long have you been in the business? I would never say 2 weeks. Of course, I wouldn't lie to them either. I would say, well, I'm in my first year. That sounds a lot better than 2 weeks, right? I'm in my first year. Or if you're past your first year, I would say, well, I've been doing this for a couple of years. I'm in my second year. Not, I've been doing it for just over 1 year, right? So the words you choose matter, because in my first year sounds a lot better than 2 weeks. And both statements are completely accurate, are they not? We're not lying, and we don't want to do that. We want to be honest, but the words you use matter, right? And then as you are trying to show your track record, you can use the words we. The Keller Williams team and I, right? Because you can use sales from the Keller Williams office. So you can say the Keller Williams team and I. Include yourself, because you are a part of the Keller Williams team. The team and I have done this, right? So if there's an area where Keller Williams has sold homes in that neighborhood, and you can say, hey, we sold this house, it was listed at this price. We, the Keller Williams team and I, sold it for this in this number of days, broke a record because of the market, and it was listed at 450 and it went for 500 with 20 offers. We did this, right? As a Keller Williams team, we did this. You can use those words and feel comfortable that you're being honest, because you are a part of the Keller Williams family and team. The brokerage all the agents work under Rich Summers, our principal broker. So our principal broker, we all can take credit for what happens underneath his umbrella, because we are all represented by the same broker, right? What you don't want to say is, I did this when it was Keller Williams that did that, right? But you can include yourself in the Keller Williams team and family, okay? That's probably the best answer I have in terms of how do you show your value being a new agent. You have to broaden yourself beyond just you and your limited time in the business by choosing the right words to convey a message that you're competent. And while you may not be, with the support of the Keller Williams team, like Carrie and Nick and Terry and everybody else here, you can convey that. But also you need to be able to say and be confident that I feel like I can do a good job for them, right? So you can't just say, well, yeah, I'm just going to put a sign in your yard. And part of my listing presentation, one of the slides that I have in there is that here's what the average agent does to sell your home. It's the 3 Ps. They put it on the MLS, they put a sign in the yard, and because they don't have any other kind of marketing strategy, they just pray that it's going to sell. Those are the 3 Ps. That's it. That's what most people do. They really do, right? If it's not the 2020 and 2021 market, that's what most agents are doing. And without a marketing strategy, then the sellers suffer because you're not bringing anything else of value that anybody else would be doing. So you have to come up with, okay, here's what I'm doing that's unique that other agents are not doing. Okay. And honestly, that's a different class. That's a listing class. That's a listing marketing class. But that's probably a good discussion to have. So I think I can leave that there. There's probably still some other questions, but there's some other stuff we got to get to, but hopefully that answered some of your questions. Yes? Okay.
That was great. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have, Tracy, did you have a comment or question?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So we left off on this slide of knocking on doors, introducing yourself, bringing something of value. And something of value is not, hey, I'm the best agent in the world, you should hire me. They don't care. They really don't. You need to find a way to, and I think this is in a later slide, to brag about your success without bragging, right? And that's easily conveyed by saying, hey, I just sold this in one day with 12 offers for a new record price. You're not saying I'm the best, I rock, you should hire me because I'm amazing. You're just saying, hey, here's what I've done. Let me do this for you too. So you're bragging just by telling the story, right? When you get, here's what I do, because people ask, well, what do you do? Right now, I farm to 4,000 houses every single month, which is a lot more than the 250 to 500, right? So my marketing budget has increased. I don't have time to knock every single door on 4,000 houses every single month now. So there's two ways you can do it. You can pay to send marketing material to every house. That's expensive. It's like 40 cents for a postcard. 40 cents times 4,000, that's $1,600 just in postage. That's a lot, right? And when you send a postcard, generally, if anybody's like me, I grab my mail and I'm at my kitchen counter or at the kitchen table in real close proximity to my kitchen trash can. And I'm like, well, I got to keep that one because that's got to be paid. Here's a car dealership poster. No, that fake key doesn't do me any good, right? I don't need to extend my car warranty on a car that I sold 5 years ago. Another real estate postcard, gone, right? Literally 2 seconds, just so I can see what it is, goes in the garbage, right? I like the approach of leaving things on their door. And I don't live in fantasy land. I know that my marketing material that's on their door goes right in the garbage. I know that. But what I'm doing is I'm buying an extra 20 seconds, because from the front door to the kitchen trash, the only thing in their hand is my flyer. And they're reading it as they're walking to put it in the trash can. So I get more eye time, and it's a lot less expensive. I can hire a kid and pay him 20 cents. I actually pay the kids 10 cents, but I hire 2 kids to go out at a time, just so that there's safety in numbers, right? I don't want an 11-year-old or 12-year-old that lives in the neighborhood, which is what I do. I hire those kids in the neighborhood and I send them out. And I want them to go together so that there's, a 12-year-old not just walking around by themselves. I pay each kid 10 cents a house. So I'm only paying 20 cents a door versus 40 cents for postage. And I feel like I'm saving half the cost to deliver it to the house. And I feel like I'm getting more eye time on my marketing material. So when you graduate into more houses and you're selling and you're successful in your farm, then you can actually go in and start doing that. But until then, you're knocking on every door every month and dropping them off by yourself. So there is no delivery budget. There is no postage budget. There is no, I'm paying somebody. You're doing it because you're doing it and putting in the time. Okay. What you can also do is if you get a good relationship with a mortgage lender, they are allowed by law to contribute to your marketing budget. If you have your name, your face on your marketing material, and you put them on it with the same amount of exposure, their picture, their phone number, their email, their website, the same as yours, same size, takes up the same amount of space, they can pay 50% of whatever you're spending on your marketing. Now you have to have a good relationship with a lender, because really what are you targeting? Where do lenders get their business? With buyers, right? Who are you targeting with your farming? Sellers, right? So you have to convince them that by doing this marketing, you will be able to produce buyers that you can refer to them. And really it's as simple as that seller is going to become a buyer, and that's who you can do a loan for, right? Okay. Now, this is the important part. Take a screenshot of these slides, take a picture with your phone, take good notes, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. Here's how you find and identify your farm. We want to find a neighborhood that has a high enough turnover that is worth spending your time marketing to. Okay. So really you want to find a neighborhood that has at least an 8% turnover ratio year over year. Meaning, to keep the numbers easy, if there's 100 homes in a neighborhood, there needs to be at least 8 homes in the last 12 months that sold in that 100 neighborhood, a 100 house neighborhood. Does that make sense? So 8%. What I've noticed is there's fewer listings on the market in this last 12 months. So if you're around 6.5 to 7%, that's probably okay because there's fewer homes
Can I interject
selling.
for just a moment?
You may.
How do you find these percentages?
We're getting there. You have the best questions, Tracy. We're
Sorry.
getting there. So you want to find that ratio, and in this market you could dip it down to 6 to 7% because fewer homes are selling. But really, in a more balanced market, you want to see 8 to 10%. Otherwise, you're spending time and money in a neighborhood that people just aren't moving in, and there's just not enough business for you to go get enough business for yourself. So here's to Tracy. This is for you. Here's what you do. It's a manual process. First of all, you need to figure out where do I want to farm? Do I want to farm where I live? What type of neighborhoods are going to move the fastest? In fact, let's just open that up. A couple of people, where do you think? You can unmute and just what price point? And the price point in every city is going to vary. But are we talking first time buyer, second time buyer, luxury home? What price point demographic would have the highest and fastest turnover year over year? What demographic of homeowners stay in their home the least amount of time?
I would say first time home buyers.
You got it. You got it. Yeah. On average in Utahns stay in their homes 5 to 7 years. First time buyers, 3 to 5. Now, if you want to go after a higher end price point, that's fine. You want to go after luxury, that's fine. You can have a neighborhood of 300 houses, and in every year, 2 of them sell. You need to get at least one of those, right? But if you're in a neighborhood of 500 first-time entry-level homeowners that they've been there for 2, 3, 4 years, guess what? You're going to have a higher turnover in that lower price point neighborhood than any other neighborhood. So you can focus on condos, townhomes, or single-family homes in that entry-level price point. Now, in the last 15, 18 months, that price point has gone up by 50 to 100 grand. So we're not talking like $250,000 in West Valley now. We're talking 300 to 350,000 in West Valley. We're talking, 4 to 450 in West Jordan. We're talking 550 in South Jordan. It's crazy that a first-time entry-level single-family home in those cities are at those price points, but that's where they are. So you got to figure out before you even do the research, what price point neighborhood what price point do I want to target? Then you're like, okay, well, where do I want it to be? Where I live, close to where I live. Do I live in Lehigh, but do I want to farm in Sandy? Do I live in South Jordan, but want to farm in West Valley? Do I live in West Valley, but want to farm in South Jordan? So you got to kind of get a general idea of where you want to be.
I have a question.
Then, yes.
Are you going to get into where we can actually figure out those percentages? Is it somewhere on the MLS that you look at?
There's 2 places. So the first thing you want to do is go to Google Maps. Once you've identified, okay, I want to farm this neighborhood, go to Google Maps and outline the neighborhood. So let's just say it's from 90th South to 98th South and 40th West to 48th West. Let's say it's that block. And let's just say there's 500 houses there. And the reason you're going to Google Maps is because you need to just count how many houses are there. You can send the information to the title company and say, hey, can you tell me how many houses are in this blocked off area? And 3 days later, you'll probably get the information. Or in 3 minutes, you can pull up Google Maps and just zoom in and start counting individual rooftops, okay? Let's say, for the sake of the example, there's 500 houses. Now, you go into the MLS, and if those of you that aren't super familiar, have Carrie or Nick help you, go into the MLS, and you are going to go to the map. You can go to the city first and select the city of the neighborhood that you chose. Go to map, and then it will zoom in on the map in the MLS and highlight, just like you did on Google Maps, highlight that area.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
Is there any way that you can actually show us how to do that at some point?
There's not enough time in this training because we're going to go right up to 12 o'clock, which is when this ends. And that's without even going into that. Okay. So I'm just kind of going to give you an overview of how to do it. And those of you that know how to go into the MLS can do it. Those that need some help, Carrie and Nick can do a one-on-one or a smaller group training with that. So I apologize. I wish I could, but that's probably like a 15 to 30 minute, and we just don't have time in the hour that I have to do that. But you want to go into the map and highlight the same map area that you did in Google Maps. And then you go into your status and you're selecting sold status. And then automatically the sold status will go back 12 months. If you want to see what it was from January 1 to December 31st, you can select those dates. But automatically it will go from the date that you are today, it'll go back 12 months from today. And then just hit search. And then it will show you how many homes sold in that 500 house neighborhood. And if we want an 8% turnover, how many homes in that 500 house neighborhood have to have sold in the last 12 months for it to be a viable farm to start with? How many homes do we need roughly, give or take? 8% of 500, we need 40 houses. So if there's, I would say 35 to 40 houses that sold in that 500 house neighborhood farm, that's a good place to start, okay? But there's one more step. Short of going in and showing you in the MLS how to do this, any questions on actually how to identify the percentage and the ratio for turnover? Okay, now the next most important thing is you want, out of those 500 houses in that neighborhood and out of the 40 that sold, we need to know, is someone else already focusing and targeting their marketing in that neighborhood? So what we want to avoid is going into a neighborhood where somebody else is already dominating that neighborhood. If they're already selling more homes than anybody else, if you go into one of my West Jordan farms, you're probably going to be spending time and money and not find a lot of success. So you want to find a neighborhood where it's been neglected from agents that are not farming or doing anything specific. And that's where we want to find an agent no agent that has more than 10 to 15% market share.
Well, how do you know that?
And it's almost the same way. So you already have your search results in the MLS, right? You have your 40 listings. So you select all 40, you just select all. And then in the drop down to select what kind of list you want to look at, you can look at client list, brief list, select full agent report. You already have the list generated because you just did that to know how many sold. So you select all and you select full agent report. Now the next slide is going to be full agent report for all 40 of those listings. And again, it's a manual process. There's really no technical way to do this. So you're looking at the first listing, you scroll down to the bottom where it identifies who the listing agent was and who the buying agent was. We don't care who the buying agent was. We want to know who the listing agent was. We want to know who in there put their sign in the yard in that neighborhood. And then you can create an Excel spreadsheet. You can write it down on a notepad, write the listing agent's name, not the brokerage, the specific agent. Scroll down to the second listing and the third, all the way to the 40th, and you're writing down every agent's name. When an agent's name reappears a second or third or fifth time, just put a tally mark next to their name, or however you want to tally all of the agents. But what we're looking for is out of those 40, if somebody has a 10% market share, they would have sold 4 of those 40 listings. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but if somebody's selling 4 homes in one neighborhood in 1 year, they're doing something to get repeat business. So they're already using some sort of strategic marketing strategy to get those 4 listings. So we probably want to move on and we repeat the process by finding a different neighborhood, pulling up Google Maps, counting rooftops, going into the MLS, finding the sold properties for that neighborhood, and then finding out the percentage to make sure there's enough turnover, and then finding out, is there another agent in that neighborhood? If there's 40 listings and one agent sold 2 houses, another agent sold 2, and everybody else sold 1, the agents that sold 2 probably got a second listing off of the one that they sold, and their neighbor's like, hey, you got to use my guy or my girl, right? But they're not doing anything specific, okay? So if an agent already has 10 to 15% or more market share, it's a neighborhood you want to just leave alone and move on and find a different neighborhood that doesn't already have somebody marketing in that neighborhood. Questions? I know we didn't dive into the MLS to actually see that, but again, it just takes too much time. So short of that, any questions on finding the neighborhood, the turnover ratio in a particular neighborhood, and the dominance of an agent in their market share in the neighborhood. Okay. Those are the two probably most important things. And again, if you want a high turnover neighborhood, try to find the entry level price point for that area. You can pick 700,000, you can pick 1.5. You're just going to have fewer homes to have opportunities to list. The more, I mean, there's some neighborhoods in my farm that some years, you know, only 5% turnover. But then the next year we had one year where 22% of them turned over because it was first time buyer. And it was just kind of the wave of when everybody kind of bought at the same time and they were all ready to go at the same time. So you want to have a neighborhood where there's really some good turnover. Okay, here's the next thing. Take a picture of this slide, screenshot it, take some notes, because this is how you start. We've got 5 minutes. I'm going to go into this. Carrie, who's after me at noon?
It's Nick, I believe, is coming back on.
Okay, we might go just a couple minutes over. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Here's how you start. You start with an 8x8. And what an 8x8 is one marketing piece every week for 8 weeks. So an 8x8 is one a week for 8 weeks. You're really just giving it a huge marketing punch right out of the gate. I had done really just one marketing piece once a month for years and years and years. And now in the last few years, I've doubled down and I'm doing 2 a month. But when you start, you go one a week, every week for 8 weeks. We call that an 8x8. That's in the red book, the real estate millionaire agent book, written by Gary Keller. That's a marketing approach that he suggests, 8x8. And you want to put things on there that add value. Again, here's some homes that recently sold. Here's where interest rates are. Here's an economic forecast. Here's, you know, again, it's not, hey, I'm amazing, I'm the best person ever. It's things of value where they feel like they can come to you because you're the expert. If it's in a neighborhood or a city where there's some things coming up, hey, just so you know, this weekend, this is happening at the neighborhood park. It can be things like that, right? You want to door knock when you're doing these 8x8s. You're not going to knock on every door every week, but you want to knock on every door every month. You want to drop your flyers. Even if nobody's home, you drop your flyer. If they're there, you hand it to them and you have a quick discussion with them. Soft sell, that's the key. Circle farm. Circle farming is basically if there is a listing that pops up in your farm, your 500 houses, and then there's someone else that lists the house in that neighborhood, then you walk around and talk to 50 neighbors in a circle around that listing. Statistics show that as soon as a neighbor lists their house, somebody in the next 2 weeks is going to sell their home within 50 houses. So go knock doors and talk to 50 people and bring something of value. Go, first of all, go preview that house. So you know what it looks like. You know the condition, you know the layout, you know the floor plan. Pull up the information on the MLS to know the owner's names. Because when you knock on the neighbor's door and say, hey, I just want to let you know that the Smiths right next door just listed their house. It makes a connection because they know those people too, right? But as soon as somebody lists a house in the neighborhood, even if it's not you, you're talking to 50 people immediately closest to that new listing. We talked about marketing with pieces that bring value. Use a call to action. So every piece that you drop on your flyers, call today for a free market analysis. Your home may have gone up $100,000 in the last 5 years. Call today to find out how much your home actually went up in value. Something where you're calling them to take action to reach out and contact you. The art of marketing, of just bragging about your success without it sounding like you're bragging. Like, I'm amazing, I just did this, instead of, and rather you would put, Scott just sold this for a record price in so many days. Scott can do this for you too, right? Some sort of subdued message that tells a story about how you've been successful. And then the most important part is you need to create a system so you're consistent with your marketing. Without a system, and I'm speaking about this with experience, that when you start to get busy, and I hope that all of you are so busy that you don't have time to create your marketing and go knock doors anymore. But if you have a system, you can still be busy and making money while still marketing to get future business. because when my business was busy, I would do this, because when it was busy, I had no time to create my marketing, go knock doors. And then when my busyness tail slid down and I closed all that stuff, then I'm down here trying to ramp it back up, right? You got to create a system and say, hey, every Monday I'm going to do this, or every Wednesday, or every Friday, or every day during time block when you're going to go door knock, even during your busy times. Put together a time block on every Monday. I'm going to create some new marketing pieces, and I'm going to create this many and go knock doors with this many people this week. Have a system, time block it in your calendar so that you know when it needs to be done. Your marketing material should look the same so that every time they see your stuff, it looks consistent. I've treated a great brand. I've hired a marketing expert on my team, and he's rebranded my stuff this year. It looks amazing. Don't spend a ton of money. Just make sure everything looks the same. If you're going to use your picture every time. If you have a logo, use the logo every time. Don't take 90 days before you start doing this because you need to create a logo and you're kind of stuck in that writer's block and don't know what to do to create a logo. Just start, but just make sure it looks the same. You can change it over time, but just start. Okay. Be consistent.
Can I just say one thing real
Yeah,
quick,
Carrie.
Scott? That's the beauty of Command, is a lot of this stuff is pre-templated. So you can just jump into Command and start using those things.
Absolutely. Command is amazing when it comes to that. Every time you list a house and sell a house in your farm, you should be putting out, hey, just a flyer or postcard that says, hey, just listed by Scott, or hey, Scott just sold it. And if it was an amazing sale, like over list price, so many offers, you're putting that stuff on your just sold. Call on every expired in your farm, every for sale by owner in your farm. Always ask for your clients for referrals, because a lot of times when they're moving, they're good friends with somebody in the neighborhood and they've talked about moving as well. And then use Facebook targeting for maximum exposure. We don't have time to get into that. So I'm going to just kind of go through these. These are some of my old school ones. So you can see I'm bragging without bragging, right? Sold by Scott in 6 days. Here's the price. Sold by Scott in 3 days. These are houses in 4 different neighborhoods. And the reason I put the picture is because people in different neighborhoods recognize the houses that are in their neighborhood, right? So they know it's from their neighborhood. The call to action. Remember the call to action on every piece? Right here, want top dollar for your home. And I put that on there because I'm quoting the prices, which at the time was top dollar for those neighborhoods. Want to sell quick, want a better experience. Scott delivers results as evidenced by what I just put up here in the pictures and the prices and the number of days. This was several years ago. And so selling in 1 day or 3 days, the market average was like 47 days. So I wanted to promote, I'm selling them quickly. And the call to action, call today. You can see at the bottom, this is old, but you can use your lender. If he's marketed, he can pay 50% of your marketing budget. This is what people love the most, is these market updates. The MLS has changed their policy. You can no longer market a specific property that you did not sell from your brokerage. If it's outside your brokerage, you cannot say, hey, this home at this address sold. So I don't put addresses anymore. I'll just put like the style of the house. Hey, a 2-story home with 4 bedrooms at this square footage sold at this price. And by the way, you can't ever market an active or under contract listing of anybody ever, unless it's your own, not even the offices. Okay. So just be careful when you're using market updates, but people love this the most because this adds the most value, but you got to make sure you're in compliance with the MLS policy.
So
yes.
You did say that you can list the address if it's within Keller Williams, as long as it's sold by someone at the Keller Williams office that we're at?
Yes, I would, if it's in the office, I would get that agent's permission just because it's their listing. But from an MLS policy standpoint, because all listings fall under the principal broker, they're owned by the brokerage. So it's within MLS policy to do that if it's within the brokerage, but I would still, as a courtesy, just ask the listing agent, hey, do you mind if I use yours in a market update that you just sold on this street? And almost every agent would be fine with that. Another one, this is what we do now. These are our door hangers. So we've changed the look, we've changed the colors, we've changed the brand. Still with the market update, you can see how I've taken off the address and just using the style of house. This probably is still kind of gray borderline if it's within MLS compliance, because these are just saying, hey, here's what's sold, but we're not sharing these are specific houses that sold. We're just saying, this is a house that sold at this square footage at this price. So I would just recommend that you consult with the MLS policy to know exactly what you can and can't do. Again, a call to action. We have approved buyers looking for homes in your neighborhood. Call us today, always with a call to action. This is not a door hanger, but a postcard that we send to a couple of townhome complexes. We hand deliver all the door hangers. We market to a couple of townhome complexes, and most HOAs don't allow door-to-door knocking or solicitation with door hangers. So then we mail those to the townhomes. And that's the back. By the way, I am a proponent of getting full commission every single time. But I am also a proponent of the best marketing you can do is to show success in the neighborhood where you're farming. And if that means I have to chalk up a marketing expense in the form of a commission reduction as an incentive for them to hire me to get my sign in that neighborhood as quickly as possible, if I make $2,000 less, $3,000 less to get my sign in there, that's the best marketing that you can do, is have your sign with the sold sign on it in the neighborhood where you're farming. So I just chalk up, hey, I'll offer a discount. Just hire me. I'll put my sign in the yard. I'll get it sold. And that's the best marketing you can do. I wouldn't do that every single time, but I would do it on the first couple, because the best thing you can do is show that you can sell homes in that neighborhood for top dollar, sell them quick, bring lots of offers in this market, and then people will start calling you. Just really quick, and I'll turn the time over to Nick. Other things you can do to get to know neighbors and reinforce your branding is you can sponsor a neighborhood movie night at the park, right? Get a blow up screen, bring a projector, and have a neighborhood movie night in the park. You can partner with your lender and have him share the cost and just bring in an ice cream truck, and everybody comes and everybody gets an ice cream, and you're shaking hands and meeting people, and you're paying for half and your lender's paying for half. Bring in a food truck, taco truck, do a bounce house party, sponsor an Easter egg hunt, or anything else that you can do to bring people in the neighborhood together. You can put a banner out. You can ask the food truck, can you also, hang your banner on their food truck while they can still promote their food truck name, hand out cards, hand out prizes, whatever else you want to do. So really, in summary, farming is building a business for the long term. You become branded as the neighborhood expert. You become the go-to agent in the area. Your sellers turn into buyers. You can double end your sales. I can't tell you how many buyers I've matched up with one of my sellers' houses because they wanted to sell and then buy a listing that I already had in a neighborhood, and also listed my buyer's house and then sold that buyer into one of my seller's houses. Especially in this market where it's so competitive, if you can puzzle piece together a buyer to a listing that you already have, because the challenge is getting buyers' houses nowadays. And I have matched up probably in the last 3 months, 3 or 4 buyers without them having to compete with multiple offers, move them right into one of my sellers' houses before the house was even on the market. Your current listings will turn into more listings, and then you get to choose where you do most of your business. So it's your business. Only you can make it a success. So I wish you guys all the best. I'll end with just, if you have any questions, because I know I'm taking Nick's time, but any questions, I want to just kind of be able to help you with any questions that you have before we turn it back over to Nick.
Scott,
And sorry, go ahead, Clyde.
Are we going to get a copy of this presentation so we can just review it?
I can give some information to Carrie so she can pass it out. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just want to look back at the slides.
Sure, you bet. Anybody else?
No, I just want to say thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks, Tyler. Thank you guys for your time.
Thanks. You
You
bet.
guys are in good hands.
Scott.
You bet. Thanks,
Okay.
guys. Good luck.
Thank you. He's incredible, isn't he?
Yeah.
Did you guys learn quite a bit just off of that one piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was very informative.